My previous posts were about how communication works and things that causes it not to work well. But in each of those, I've assumed that both members of the couple want to communicate well. But what happens if one person doesn't want to? What can you do about that? Well, I want to talk a little bit to the person who doesn't want to improve their communication. And the first thing I'd like to do if I get to talk to someone like that would be to ask them why. Why do you not want to improve the communication in your marriage? I don't know for sure what you would say. I thought of 5 different examples of reasons that you might have for not wanting to improve your communication. And the first one would be, you might say something like, well, she's always so critical of everything that I have to say that I'm just burnt out. I just really don't even want to talk. And, in some cases, you might have a point. It may be accurate to say that you get to hear quite a bit of criticism, and so you really are kind of tired of that. The Gottman Research Institute has identified what they call the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, and that's having to do with communication. In a case where the 4 horsemen are present in communication, they are a good predictor of divorce. One of those 4 horsemen is criticism. Criticism is the idea that it's an attack on the other person's character or personality. It says things like, you always, or you never. And when you do this, when I do this, what we're doing is we might even be presenting an issue or a topic that is truthful, is legitimate, and yet because of the way we express it, we're not heard. The solution to the problem is what's called a soft startup. The idea that instead of attacking when we say something, that instead we're presenting the differences between a criticism is a complaint. The idea that we would just say, I wish. So as an example, instead of saying, you never pick up your socks, I would say, I wish you would pick up your socks. It makes a big difference. Criticism will tend to move toward another one of the horsemen, and that's contempt. Contempt actually is attacking your spouse's sense of self or personality, and with the intent to insult or to abuse psychologically. It's aimed at the heart of the spouse, and it includes insults, mockery, and harsh and sarcastic humor. Another thing that a person who says, I don't really even want to try to work on communication, what they might be talking about is, or another example that they might give would be that, she always just makes a mountain out of a molehill. Oh, and by the way, when I say she, it could just as easily apply to he in any of these cases. And I suppose that it could be true. Some spouses might kind of have a flair for the dramatic. But this is some more Gottman Research Institute. They have found that while women tend to take influence fairly well from their husbands, men sometimes can be less willing to take influence from their wives, and that when that is the case, that it is also a good predictor of divorce. So if you're just not real inclined to do that, all I need to do in this case is just point out to you that it is a good predictor of divorce. If you decide that you don't need to hear what she has to say, and I'm right and she's wrong and that kind of thing. So it's an opportunity for you to improve your marriage just by changing your attitude. A third thing would be, well, I'm just not good at listening. And I suppose that could be true. There are probably some of us out there that have issues with attention deficit. But in general, I think it's fair to say that most of us can focus on something that we're really interested in. And we'll listen to something that really has us. I also suspect that most of us, if we really believe that listening better will improve our other aspects of our marriage relationship, we might be motivated to do it. So, I'm not saying that there might not be a challenge in terms of our abilities, but sometimes I wonder if it's less about ability and might be more about motivation. The fourth one would be, I don't care anymore. And that's a problem. In some cases where criticism goes towards defensiveness, which is not being willing to take responsibility for a complaint or criticism, and where the criticism or the contempt are there, yeah, you might just be burnt out to the point where you just don't want to put up with it anymore. Another thing might be that if there are other priorities that have come in and taken over in your relationship, you may really not be at a place where you have a lot of desire to work on that relationship. It's interesting too, because Jesus actually talks about this in Matthew 6:21. He talks about the issue of money, and he says that where we treasure what we store up, what we treasure, that's where our heart is. Where your treasures are, your heart will be there too. And so we have the opportunity, implied there, we have the opportunity to treasure things, to choose what we treasure. A last comment that maybe someone would say when they say, oh, I just don't really want to work on communication because I've found someone else. And you know, whether that is a real person, whether that's an online relationship, if it's pornography, in all these cases, the research shows that in almost all cases, abusive cases are a different story, but in most cases, the best potential for a good relationship is the one that you're in now. And that might be really hard to hear for somebody who's in the middle of an affair and you're, as I heard one expert say it, on the drug of that other woman. But in those cases too, the research still stands, and your best opportunity for a good relationship and a lasting relationship is the one you're in now. And it is likely that the person that you are in the affair with at this point will at some point disappoint you as much or more than your current spouse. So, and one last question on that is, if this spouse, if this person that you're in an affair with is willing to cheat with you, I guess I would wonder what is stopping that person from someday being willing to cheat on you. So finally, or to summarize, I'd say, you may have what looks like some good reasons not to work on the communication aspect of your relationship, but often, very often, if you're willing to put forth the effort, you will eventually be glad that you did. I'd like to talk to you next time a little bit more about what you can do if you are the partner who wants to work on communication. So thanks again for your attention in this video.